Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to this stream for today, May 3rd, 2025. I kind of forgot that the stream was happening, so I have to put everything together really fast. But hi, I'm Tristan. I'm your host today of the stream, the thing that we are doing at the moment. But yeah, hi, welcome. My name is Tristan. I'm the host of Step Back, the YouTube channel you're watching right now. Also the host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens. So those are two things that are true. I'm a person who has a Canadian with master's degrees in American cultural studies and American history, and ABD on a PhD on U.S. history, and then does content about the world. So, hello everybody. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday night sequence of things. So, hopefully I sound okay. And then I'll make sure the music doesn't stop for some random reason. There we go. I know one thing I need to do is that I need to unpair my headphones from my... Yeah, that'll do it. ABD. ABD means all but dissertation. So I had finished all the coursework. I had done the comprehensive exams, which is sort of like a big... it's a big test you do at the end of your second year of your PhD to basically show that you know enough about the subject material that you are in that you could teach a university level class on your subject. So I took the tests to prove that I could teach U.S. history at the university level. Yeah. So that's sort of where things are at. And you know, less than a week ago, my country had a federal election, so that was fun. It's one of those things where it's very much didn't feel like an American election, because it was like a lot of Canadian elections. It's like, oh, we kind of already knew how things were going to shake out weeks in advance. And then it kind of is like, oh yeah, it's like not a surprise at all. But there's still like a lot of, the things that happened during that election were still kind of, that Canada's in a weird space, and there's a lot of things that are going to change. Anyways, let's take a look at some of these questions out here. I got a couple questions at the top. But let me see if there's anything. Usually we do something called wins, W's. So at the top of a stream, one of the things that we do is, because we are an anti-doomer stream here, is we celebrate our wins, no matter how big or small, to cheer on the progress of people, and hopefully, encourage us to be better versions of ourselves, and to celebrate each other, build each other up, so that we can build the world that needs to be born. So yeah, that's the handful of things. I can try to think about how to start, but because it's been about a month, and in the last month, I can't say that a lot of good stuff's happened. I gotta say, I found out that I'm probably getting laid off in the months to come. And I just saw today that Mark Carney's planning on cutting back immigration even more, which, just because of the nature of my job, probably means that it'll be happening sooner rather than later. So that's fun. That's super fun. And, yeah, I'm in a state where I am excited to be looking for jobs in the current economy. That'll be... You look scruffy. Yeah, I do look scruffy. I have... I'm very overdue for a haircut. I'm getting one on Tuesday. So I have definitely... I've definitely gone too long. I kind of forgot about it and I got busy. But I have one on Tuesday. I have a haircut coming on Tuesday. Let's see. Tarbo. Multiple people have told you to start podcasting. Your wife is doing very well in her schooling and you're proud of her. It's pretty good news. Go get it. Go get it. That sounds pretty fun. Very good. Yeah, a trim and some trim. Yeah, I have a barber that I've been seeing for years, and she does a pretty good job at controlling this mess, so I'm gonna go see her and she'll fix me right up. She's great though. And then yeah, I'm trying to think about, like, I got some, like, a lot of news on your end either. Aw. Yeah. Life's kind of rough right now. Not gonna lie, but there are still things to look forward to. I don't know if this was true of the last session, but I had some medication that I was taking for anxiety that improved my mood quite a bit, and then I ran out and my mood went down again. But I got it back just the other day, so it's back again. So hopefully I'll be bouncing back and be better than ever. I guess on another front too, that is a win, especially for you guys, is a couple of things. One, I have been doing interviews for my next Step Back video. It's going really well, and once the few that I have kind of on the books right now are done, I'm going to actually get going to, what's it called? I'm going to start writing, and I'll have a script, and I'm going to hire an editor, so the editing process is going to go a lot faster than it usually does. So a video is moving along very slowly, but as fast as I have the time to spare to it, I probably will have a little bit more also come like late June, because I have a freelance project that I'm also doing right now that's eating up a bunch of my my time, and I'm doing some volunteer work for the library that is also eating up a bunch of my time, and all of those are going to be done in like the next like 4 or 5 weeks. So that'll be fun, and I'll be laid off, so I won't have a day job anymore either. Fun. But I am also I'm also very much looking forward to I'm also like Scott had some major, like, he had some wisdom teeth issues. He's in a lot of pain, but I am told that a few days ago he told me he's feeling a lot better, and so we are looking to record the next season of the podcast pretty soon, and we have editors for that as well, which means that once those are recorded, they'll start coming out in pretty quick order, which means I can probably start getting work on the next season of the show right away too. So all that, very, very good. Are you on escitalopram? No, I am on... It sounds like... I am on 3 prescription medications, none of which are surprising, nor are they very interesting. But yeah, I'm on a Vyvanse for ADHD, and then I'm on like a blood pressure medication for the fact that I'm taking the Vyvanse, and then I'm on what's it called? I am on a the mood improving one is Wellbutrin or Wellbutrin, whatever you want to call it, or it's a generic of it anyway. which is kind of sucks in the summertime because Wellbutrin makes you sweat a lot, but it makes me not hate myself and everything. So that's kind of the things that I got going on there. Because, you know, I'll be honest with you. Like, the Wellbutrin is needed. My mood... Let's just... Hypothetically, imagine you had your dream job. A job that people were dying to get. A job where every day your life had actual meaning, where people sought you out for advice, and, you know, you felt like you were making a difference in the world. And then imagine inflation triples the price of everything, and you have to abandon your job. And you get another job where you work in an office answering emails and being micromanaged. And that is your life. You are a professional email answerer. And you can imagine that the going from dream job to person who answers emails for a living would be quite apocalyptic, I would say, when it comes to not only like my quality of life, but like, you know, my like happiness and stuff. So, and I have never, you know, it takes a lot to process the fact that your life is really, really depressing compared to what you were doing just a few months ago. And so my mood took a huge like dump. I was finding myself in a absolutely like one of the worst depressive episodes I've ever experienced in my life. I had nights like a few like maybe about like 6 months ago where in the evening when everything settled down, I would find myself sitting at the computer staring at the screen just like waiting for bedtime because I was just like, I cannot bring myself to do anything. My mood is so bad. I'm exhausted, and yet like I cannot drag myself to even do the bare minimum. It was one of the worst things. It was one of the worst places my mind has ever been. And I'm still not 100% out because, you know, I lost it. I lost the dream. And so I have to figure out, you know, how to be okay with that. And pills apparently is the way to do that. So that's fun. Anyways, that's a thing. Yeah. What is, let's take a look at some of these questions. So we got some questions before the stream from Nordic Mountain. I can definitely try to answer some of these. So first question, do you think that the new Liberal government has the potential to make Canada an economic powerhouse? So, oh yeah. So Canada had an election last week, last Monday. Or I should say, I guess, on Monday, because, you know, it's the same week still. And almost exactly down the line of, I think the 338, which is sort of the Canadian version of 538, projected that the federal parliament was going to result in a liberal, I think it said 71% chance of a liberal majority government, and like a 30-something% chance of a liberal minority government, but like almost guaranteed liberal government. And we got a liberal minority government, but like a strong one where they only need like, I only need like a handful of seats to actually like win to actually like, you know, push it over the top. So nothing too yeah. The bigger stories are that the NDP took an absolute fucking nosedive. Almost all of those liberal gains happened because of the NDP support base just completely emptying out underneath the Carney government. Because of cowardly progressives who, yet again, got tricked by the Liberals into the absolutely anti-democratic and completely nonsensical logic behind strategic voting. And we ended up with, because, you know, every time everyone talks about strategic voting, they always go like, oh, yeah, you have to support whoever is going to beat the Conservatives. It's anybody who could beat the Conservatives. The thing, though, is that this is almost exclusively used to make people who are normally NDP supporters vote for the Liberals. And it happened. And it happened in like the sort of anyone but conservative campaign. All it really did was result in more people voting liberal, including in ridings where the NDP candidate is the incumbent and was winning, and resulted in splitting the vote and causing a conservative win in that riding, because it turns out that you can't really like do a strategic voting program like they were trying to do, and you just and anytime you try, you are just trying to make progressives vote for a right-wing candidate again, and that's what happened. And now we have Mark Carney. Now we have Mark Carney in power with who is probably the most right-wing leader the Liberal Party's ever had. And though they have a minority government, they don't have that many seats that they need to like get like unchecked power. All they would need is like with a large conservative minority like in second place, and like, you know, a like Bloc Québécois having about like 20 something seats, like they wouldn't need a whole lot of power brokering to put in like the worst of all of the sort of neoliberal right-wing shit that that will happen. And now that the NDP is effectively like non-existent in Parliament, I think they were reduced to like 7 seats or 9 seats, something in that range. They are effectively a non-entity in government now, and that means that all of the goodies that Canadians got through the Trudeau government with the Supply and Confidence Agreement, like, you know, the $10 a day daycare benefit, the dental coverage for seniors, and the sort of pharmacare for certain medications, don't expect those to stick around for too long, and also don't expect like any Canadian, like any new social programs anytime soon, because we're in the carneyverse now, baby. And the carneyverse is all about austerity and tax cuts for rich people. That's literally what he campaigned on. It was so weird to see like progressive Canadians who called themselves like left wing, some even calling themselves leftists, clapping like fucking sea lions because of the victory of a central banker who literally campaigned on tax cuts for rich people and extreme austerity measures. So that's fun. That's super duper fun. So do I think the new Liberal government has the potential to make Canada an economic powerhouse? No. I think that Canada has some rough years ahead of it. We have some major realignment. We are a country that completely dedicated itself to serving the United States and being a basically economic nub on its rump, just feeding it raw resources for its industrial engines and doing all of their bidding on the world stage, because they were our best ally, and they were we had the biggest land border, and it was our strategic edge was basically being the sort of like one of the US's closest and most loyal manservants, and we don't have that anymore. And we're far too capitalist and racist to be like, hey, Xi Jinping, let's make a deal, because we won't do stuff. We still won't take off like our 100% tariff on Chinese EVs and stuff like that, and so we are going to like my guess is that Mark Carney is going to do something like, we need to invest in oil pipelines and AI, and it's going to be a gigantic we're going to build way more oil pipelines, even though the Bloc Québécois has said that they refuse to work with the Liberals if they build more oil pipelines because of the continued existence of the planet Earth. But Carney's opposition is the bunch of people who are so horny for pipelines that if he tried to buy out 30,000 new pipelines that are all just this turn Alberta into one giant pipeline, I'm sure they would be so fucking happy, and that'll happen. Although I did hear that apparently oil prices are going to crash next week, or that OPEC just did a thing where the oil price is going to plummet next week, which means that the Alberta oil sector, which is painfully dependent on high oil prices, is also going to implode, like it did in 2020. And and we're not going. I don't know what we're going to do about that. I don't know how we're going to solve that problem because we've put all of our eggs in that basket for so long. So I think that Canada's got some pretty rough times ahead of it, and I think that Carney's all of the tools that Carney has to fix the Canadian economy are not ones that would actually work, because Carney's plans for fixing the economy will be tax cuts for rich people and austerity for everyone else to balance the budget. And that is the logic that led to the Great Depression. So, like, because, like, rich people are not going to, in times of economic uncertainty, invest more in the economy. If you want to invest more in the, like rich people only invest in things that they think they can get a return on. If we are in a recession, we are not going to do that. What we are going to do is hand out more money that we do not have to rich people by giving them tax cuts. And then they're going to sit on it, or they're going to buy assets in other countries. And then we are going to then cut services so that the people who are living precariously because they're going to get laid off, or you know, the money supply is going to run out because we don't have our largest trading partner anymore, and there's no other country except for China that we refuse to work with that will that'll be, like, you know, a source of economic benefit for us. And so we're going to probably be in a pretty bad recession. And the austerity measures will mean that the people who do not have the money to survive are going to be even more stringent with their money, which means they're going to start saving up instead of buying things. And when people don't buy things, that's less GDP. That's economic ungrowth, and all of a sudden we're in recession. But capitalists can't understand that aspect of money anymore, and so Carney is just going to kind of keep ideologically driving us to hell. It'll be really fun. Maybe he'll bail out some banks or something to save it, but, you know. Here we are. Will Quebec MPs help the Liberals out of spite to Trump? You mean the Bloc Québécois? Potentially. Depends upon the deal. Carney just said he's, like, not making any supply and not any agreement with the NDP. He's, like, ruled it out. He's not doing it. I think he did that in an interview, like, yesterday. And, like, yeah, we'll see what happens when this new parliament sits, because it's going to be, like, the only things I've heard from Carney's agenda so far are a cut to our capital gains tax structure. Cool. That's tax cuts for rich people. Cuts. And I've seen a wanting to decrease the permanent resident count of the country to less than 1% of the population of the country, which is huge, until housing quote catches up. So that is a massive cut to our immigration levels, which have already been massively cut, and is going to result in some real economic bad times for our cities, because, you know, we have done no effort to invest in our universities and our science and our technology. And also, we don't have a very high birth rate in Canada, which means that immigration is sort of the key to our population even being stable and, you know, not, like, you know, like, rapidly aging. And yet, here we are. We're just doing the thing. That's cool. Love that. Love that for us. Yeah. How come the NDP do very good at the provincial level and very poor federally? Because they're different parties. You might not know this because if you're not American or if you're not Canadian, but, like, for example, the NDP at the federal level, the one that used to be ran by Jagmeet Singh, is the NDP of Canada. But, like, the NDP party of Ontario is a different political party. They coordinate a lot and they have a lot of, like, similar ideas, but, like, they're not the same party. And every province in Canada has its own set of political parties. Like, Ontario is governed by the Progressive Conservative Party, a party that does not exist at the federal level anymore. It hasn't since the early 2000s. And, like, our NDP are led by Merritt Stiles, who has a very different style of politics than the federal party does. And, various provinces. In various provinces, especially out west, the NDP are. The Liberal Party at the provincial level is effectively dead, and the NDP have sort of fit in as the non-conservative alternative in a lot of the provincial politics out there. And so that's where you're at. They're just different parties. And at the federal level, people kind of just see things in conservative and liberal. Like, there are a lot of districts in Ontario that vote NDP at the provincial level and vote conservative at the federal level and stuff like that. It's weird. It's really weird. Let's see. Though I didn't get laid off, my job is forcing me back into the office. Yeah, I'm on a hybrid, 3 days in on the office, and it's not fun. Will the NDP ever make a comeback? Really good question. I don't have an answer at the moment, and nobody really does. The NDP are in a really, really tough situation. So for anyone who doesn't know about Canadian politics, the NDP are like a Canadian, center-lefty party. They're the only left-wing party that is in Parliament that is not like an explicitly nationalist party. Like, the Bloc Québécois are fairly social democratic too. The NDP are only like social democratic political party. Like, the Liberals and the Conservatives are both firmly on the right, and the NDP are like our only left-wing party, but they're not left-wing. They're social democrats, not democratic socialists. A fight I have been having with a lot of people. Anyways, the NDP have no money. They have lost almost all of their presence in Parliament, meaning they lost official party status, which means that they have lost a good amount of money and ability to speak and ask questions in Parliament and all sorts of stuff like that. They are in a pretty bad place. They just lost their leader, who led them to a massive defeat. Now, there are two ways you can look at it. So, one way you could look at it is that this is a weird election. That a lot of the former MPs have kind of talked about, like, hey, why'd you lose? It was like, well, it's because this was a weird... The 2025 election was a weird election. And a lot of NDP people got spooked and voted Liberal. And so we have to figure out what to do. What the party is going to do after that is anybody's guess. But the party needs a new leader, and one of the big things that you will see if you look at like the federal election results is that a lot of the NDPs over the last few elections, the NDP have lost significant ground to the Conservatives in specifically like working class and like rural areas. And the like in like the area of like labor and like unions and stuff like that, the NDP have lost a lot of ground. And so if the next leader can be like unfortunately, and I was talking about this with some friends in a group chat, but like unions are like the only political entity, like the only sort of entity in Canada with like power and money that are amenable to the NDP's causes. Like they have money, they have people, they have infrastructure, and while like, the Liberals and Conservatives have billionaires that they can use to just, hire an entire, like they can make their own operations, they can just buy out, like, any corporation will give them money to support their cause. The NDP don't have anything like that because the NDP explicitly is like, well, less than it used to be, but the NDP's policies are not exactly amenable to the wealthy. So the only like organization that can like channel money for donations, like the only like alternative ways to go about it is you either go like the Bernie Sanders route, where you try to be singularly from a leader so charismatic that you can raise a shitload of money through small dollar donations, which you could do, but that is very fragile and dependent on like the leader being very, very charismatic and very good. Or you need somebody who is really good at speaking to voters, to labor. And my guess is that there's going to be a leadership race, and the NDP are going to make a decision. And if you know history is to go, the NDP tend to make disappointing decisions. But we'll see. We'll see who actually like puts their hat in the ring, what the leadership race actually looks like. They might come to the conclusion that this is the time to actually embrace their socialist roots and make a stand, because now with Carney being so far to the right of even where Trudeau was, this time last year, that that like the left flank of Canadian politics is now wide open. Like anybody can go up for grabs. There's basically nobody really pushing left-wing ideas at all in Canadian politics, and the Liberal or the NDP might try to capitalize on that somewhat. And if they have a leader who kind of channels that Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders energy, he might end up with that. Who knows? That'd be cool. But we'll see what happens. The NDP is also very cliquey and also doesn't like. They have a handful of people who run the party, and they have certain ideas and they have certain types of consultants that they like to listen to, and we'll see who wins. But yeah, if we can get an NDP leader who can make the case that maybe a rich fancy lad who's never worked a day in his life, i.e. Pierre Poilievre, if they can convince that he is no working class hero, then maybe they can swing some of those votes back. If they can get back to their union roots and get the unions back on board, which is unfortunately I don't know how I don't know who they're gonna push through to be the leader through that, but a good union leader could definitely push some of the things back over the edge. And just also the fact that there's going to be opportunity, because there's a lot of people who don't like. I think there's going to be a lot of people this time next year. I think that Mark Carney's popularity is going to be very short-lived. There's a lot of people who voted for him because they got scared of Trump and did not look into what Carney was proposing, did not look into what Carney's actual policies are, and are going to be shocked when they're going to do a Pikachu face when Mark Carney does all the things that he campaigned on, cutting budgets, cutting immigration, cutting taxes for the rich, that kind of stuff. So the NDP, I think that next election the NDP could make a decent bounce back, and if they have a smart leader, they could probably make a really good bounce back. Because I think that this election was in some ways a bit weird, and because it's a minority government, it might not even be that far away. It could be 2 years from now we could end up in another election. A year from now we could end up in another election. There's a time when I was when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, where we had a succession of conservative minority governments, and we had federal elections every 18 months, so you never know. All right, I didn't know Wellbutrin makes you sweat, but I've been taking it for the most of 20 years. Yeah, isn't that just fun? What laws can a minority government pass with crossbench support? I think the Liberal minority government's going to have a really easy time passing their tax cuts. They're going to have a really easy time building pipelines. They're going to have a really easy time, budget cuts, immigration cuts. all they need to do is get like a handful of conservatives to vote for their bills, and all of and you know the Liberal Party as like under Mark Carney is going to want to put on a lot of right wing stuff, and so the conservatives will definitely give them the votes they need for that. If they try to do something progressive, who fucking knows? But they might be able to count on the little bit of NDP support to push them over the edge, because the NDP are really small, but they are just large enough that if Mark Carney wanted to appeal to them, although he has made very clear he doesn't really want to, that he could pass progressive legislation with them. But who knows? I think that the conservatives are going to have a pretty tough time trying to figure, because like the liberals have basically rebranded themselves as a non-psychotic right-wing conservative party. They are a right-wing. They are basically the progressive conservatives of the 1990s now. Very right-wing, very much into tax cuts. Like they're basically conservatives at this point. And the Conservative Party, despite Poilievre trying to do this weird thing where he's still trying to stay on as leader and take a guy's seat, the knives are going to be out for him before long. And I think one of the big lessons of this election, because the Conservatives like went from having one of the biggest like leads in the polls to being the opposition. Like it was one of the biggest losses for their party in decades. And I'm hoping that there's a handful of conservatives that are going to strategically realize that maybe it was, you know, Pierre Poilievre's you know, playing Trump light and like venturing into all of his fucking culture war shit that might play well in Alberta but doesn't really play well in Ontario. And so there might be knives out for him. There's some people who have talked about how there might be a leadership race in the Conservative Party between Jason Kenney and Doug Ford. I don't know if Doug Ford would do it because he just got like a 4-year thing as Premier of Ontario, but there may be a move in the Conservative Party to push for a more like, hey, let's stop, like, maybe more people in the freaking suburbs of Toronto will vote for us if we focused on tax cuts and jobs instead of like, you know, getting mad at trans people and like complaining about woke or whatever. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Let's see. Yeah, Australia had a similar story, I think, happen. I heard Australia had an election and that they lost, or that their sort of center-left party beat their right-wing party, even though the right-wing party was coming in with a huge, like, basically, like, just every country is like seeing how the sort of like, you know, playing with right-wing populism that happened in the U.S. Has led to an utter fucking catastrophe for themselves and the planet. And most people are like, yeah, we would like to not do that. And so every like right-wing parties around the world are taking huge hits because of looking at the absolute fucking disaster that's happening in the U.S. and changing, like, you know, kind of having a sort of splash of cold water hit us in the face and change our minds. Do you hear that the Australian Liberal Party lost his seat in the Aussie election? It's so crazy how 2 Conservative Party leaders in the Commonwealth nations lost in the same week. Yeah, I think it's the same story, right? Albertans are never happy. No, they have terrible main character syndrome. All right, so Dave L, thank you for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that. I have this pet theory that AI is just high-tech tulipomania and that it's next to no utility. I've been wrong before, but it's a hunch. I understand the theory there. I respectfully disagree. Is it overhyped? Yes. The amount of money being poured into it is definitely like way out of line with its valuation, mostly because at the moment there's like little else for people to put venture capital into. But and this is like, unfortunately, I thought that, you know, we would have finally a fucking dialectic about this at some point and we would grow up, but apparently not. But but I've made my statement on this channel before that that AI is not going anywhere. It isn't. This isn't fucking cryptocurrency. This is an actual technology that has been in development since its origins as a Soviet project to build a network that could manage the Soviet economy, and has developed into what we have now. It is a technology that has been has had very intelligent computer scientists working on it for decades, and is just now bearing fruit in a really interesting way. But what I will say is that the hype around it, these sort of there was a lot of claims that it could do a lot of things that it cannot. There is a lot of it was explicitly brought up in talks on how it would be used to make people lose jobs. And it fucked around with a lot of established ideas about how we think about intellectual property and plagiarism and all that kind of stuff, without the people in charge seeming to have much consideration for the things that they were fucking with. Because essentially it is a technology that, while it's not going to revolutionize everything in the way that it's going to cause some kind of artificial general intelligence that will change the entire world, it is already very drastically changing large aspects of the ways that we do a lot of different parts of our lives, and not all of them in negative ways. We hear a lot of ideas, we hear a lot of big things, how the really shitty Gemini instance that they put on Google search told people to put glue on their pizza and stuff like that. But that's not where the big changes are being made. We're seeing all of the really dumb and big ones, but if you pay attention to where things are going when it comes to science and organizational technology and all this kind of stuff, and in the software development space and stuff like that, there's some serious AI is doing some serious structural changes to some of the ways that we do work and the ways that things function, that that we were surprised by. And I know I know people are very skeptical because we keep talking about it in the frames of artists and in copyright and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that one of the first things that that generative AI was able to do was one of the winners of the Nobel Prize in 2023, which was basically to completely solve the protein folding problem. We had this almost intractable issue in biology and computational biology where proteins, the sort of, the little machines that make all of life happen, are made by DNA folding the components of proteins into the little machines that do all the things that make cells work. And the ways that they fold are really complicated and hard to model and all that kind of stuff. And then, and so we were doing it was more computational power to figure out all this stuff than we were ever going to be able to do. And in 2023, a team using an AI model was able to map out the entire thing. And it's already having major things to developing new cures and all sorts of medical breakthroughs and stuff like that. So it was a huge deal. And you're seeing more stuff like that when it comes to things like synthetic data and what's it called? Synthetic data is it sounds worse than it actually is, but synthetic data is used in a lot of scenario modeling and all sorts of I don't know. It's another one is that the same type of software architecture is driving a really, really fascinating series of breakthroughs when it comes to fusion, or two things. One is that it's making huge strides in changing a lot of the issues that we were dealing with when it came to fusion power. To explain that, nuclear fusion, a technology that has been slowly incubating for decades and has had like some major hurdles thrown towards making it work, had some major problems due to the fact that it's a massive technological undertaking. If you think about it, how it works is that you use magnets, extraordinarily powerful, like unimaginably powerful magnets. Like the latest one that just like sort of just got put together apparently could hover an aircraft carrier. Like that's how powerful these magnets have to be. And you use them to contain hydrogen gas, and compress it enough that it then turns into a plasma and fuses into helium, like it does in a star. So you use the magnetic power to create like the kind of constriction forces that you need to have pressure akin to, like, the gravity of a fucking star. It's huge, and one of the big things that it requires, because like the fusing hydrogen is like something like fucking 10 million degrees Celsius, like some insanely high temperature. And it has to be fairly close to these magnets, but for these magnets to function, they have to be cooled to like almost absolute zero. So all of a sudden you have to be able to maintain regularly the most like some of the highest temperatures in the universe next to some of the coldest temperatures in the universe. And to do so, you have to maintain this magnetic field, and the magnetic field has to be kept very even. It kind of makes like a donut shape. That's why I was doing that. There was an AI system that came. I think it was in 2023 or 2024. Was able to manage the magnetic field and make the sort of little micro adjustments that you can do faster than a human being can. And that resulted in some major breakthroughs when it came to maintaining that reaction for longer, to the point where it was a technology that had been for decades kind of almost to the point where it became a joke that it was like, like fusion power is going to be 10 years in the future forever. And has led to like some serious breakthroughs to the point where like there are some plants that are coming online that are getting constructed right now that intend fully to become commercial power plants, which would be like unheard of. Like there's been some major strides because of that. And the other is in material science. There's been like a huge there's been some really huge breakthroughs in like new material science developments that humans would not even be able to make the connections about because of that. But we don't live in a world where we can have conversations about technology and we can understand things because we've come to the conclusion that if it's a technology, then it's the Silicon Valley, and because it's the Silicon Valley, therefore it is bad, and therefore technology bad, therefore AI bad, therefore it can have no redeeming qualities and we can't use it whatsoever. And also, like a lot of the other major issues that came along with it, like its power usage and stuff like that, are some of like the number one things that like what's it called? Like OpenAI signed like some weird fucking deal to make like a $10 trillion, so I don't know, some like absolutely absurd number to buy this like massive data, or build this massive data computational like data farm thing in Texas, when like then the Chinese came in and were like, actually we made something that is like on par with your technology for like 1% of its power usage, and like everybody, they published it as open source, and now everybody's like trying to figure out how they did that, and like the next generation of that is starting to come out, and like the power usage is going to go down pretty immensely as we start designing chip architecture and algorithmic optimization. Like if there's like one of the big things that Sam Altman needs to be like kicked in the ass for doing is releasing the GPT-3 model before it had like been optimized enough so that it had like a responsible amount of power usage, so that it, like, got redefined so many different things and became so popular and so used, um, before they had like done the like sort of work to not like make like they figured out what was possible, and before they could figure out how to do that at a way that you can actually scale responsibly, they just released it and then found out that the entire world like really wanted it. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's a it's an extremely important breakthrough technology that that has unfortunately come out too soon, and came out and was just released to the public without us, really dealing with all of the sort of philosophical and like legal ramifications of it before we could figure out what it's going to be in society. But honestly, it will probably cool down at some point. I think there's sort of like people already realizing the bubble's kind of bursting because everyone poured like fuckloads of money into it, and now they're realizing that it's really hard to make profitable, and it'll go dark for a while. But like, you can run something pretty good on like a gaming PC now. So it's like not going to go away. You could you could run a large language model on your computer if you really wanted to. And it's just going to get that process is getting more and more efficient, and you can run like better and better models on lower and lower end systems. And so even after the big things, the big brands, if they all crash or whatever, I still think that it's going to exist in one capacity or another. You can't uninvent it. It's going to be around doing stuff forever. And so hopefully it'll its actual use cases will develop, and the sort of the scramble to get investor capital by like cramming it into as many things that really don't need it as you can will hopefully go away, and we can actually like figure out what kind of role it's going to play in like the world in the future. And honestly, it disrupted a whole lot of the ways that we do a lot of knowledge work. And at the moment, the instinct has been to react against it, but honestly, like, it's not going to go away, and so we have to figure out what a world with it looks like, and like as a technology, where it has use and where it doesn't, and etc., 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 because that's all going to be worked out by people using it and seeing what happened. But I would say that like it's not a thing that like OpenAI wouldn't have gone from being this like obscure nonprofit to being like, potentially like one of the most profitable companies on the planet, or at the very least like owning like I think like one of the top websites that exists on the internet now. They wouldn't have done that if it was completely useless and nobody wanted to use it. And I think that the people who are trying to talk about how it has no use either don't understand it very well, or they're just sort of like they have a bitch eating crackers sort of mentality towards it, where they don't like the circumstances surrounding its creation, and therefore they have concluded that it is bad and therefore needs to be destroyed. And there's no space in between, even though technology is just it isn't anything. It doesn't take a stand. OpenAI sucks. Anthropic sucks. Google's fucking Gemini program sucks. But the actual technology they're working with, like with the internet, like with everything, is just sort of there. And I think that a lot of people don't. I think that the people who call it like glorified autocomplete and stuff like that have not done the research, or because like they started the relationship with it with I hate this and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that it is bad, and that is never going to result in you having a like nuanced and like thorough understanding of the technology behind it, the ideas behind it, the stuff that it does, and like all that kind of stuff. Whatever. People did the same thing when the Industrial Revolution came too, and Marx pointed out that that's kind of like That's kind of like fighting industrialization is kind of like trying to fight a force of nature, and we're doing it again. Canada would be better off joining the EU. That would be nice if Canada joined the EU. I don't think we're going to get it, just because the EU has rules that they would have to bend pretty hard for us to get in. And also, there's definitely an idea that, like, if Canada became too close with the EU or too close with Europe or with China, that the US would start treating us like Ukraine, and things could get a lot grosser. Let's see. J-Lord, thank you for the 5 Aussie bucks. Why are left and right in Canada both against Carney? Where were both opposed to Trudeau as well? I mean, the Conservatives in Canada hate Carney because he's a liberal, and a lot of conservative politics is just a like visceral hatred of the liberals. Also, he believes in climate change, which is kind of interesting. He like actually is like one of Carney's like few things that he seems to actually care about is like green development. And if you know anything about Canadian conservatives, is that Canadian conservatives are fanatically anti-environment. They represent Alberta, and they're very like Alberta is like where most of their base is. Alberta is a petrol exporting, like a oil exporting province, and that has resulted in the conservatives overall in the Conservative Party fanatically being against the very concept of doing anything to do anything about climate change. And people criticize Carney from the left because he's fundamentally a conservative. The other problem with Singh is that he was too brown for a certain segment of the Canadian voting public. That is unfortunate, but also true. Jagmeet Singh basically, like, by the fact that he is either him being Punjabi or him just being a Sikh who visibly wears a turban, both of those more or less like cost the NDP the entirety of its like 2011 Orange Crush victory in Quebec, which was very sad. What is Bernie Sanders really after? He's not seeking re-election, yet he's going on tours giving anti... Does he want to push AOC for running for president? Maybe. I do think that he's trying to prop AOC up as the new face of sort of the progressive left in America. Either for her to run for president, I think that like FD Signifier said in a video that there's evidence that she is starting to kind of like think about running for president. But which might be interesting, but definitely to make her like the face of the progressive movement, because at the moment there's not really anybody else besides Sanders who really sticks out in that space, and AOC could be like you know, Ocasio-Cortez is probably the closest thing that the U.S. has to like a visible, like young leader of like, you know, the left in like democratic politics, and he's trying to use whatever he can to do that because, you know, like most people, he realizes that the Trump government that you have right now is the result of decades of, you know, neoliberalism and the sort of hacking away and like the impacts that happen to an American population after, you know, you take away basically everything they need to survive for decades. And yeah. Am I going to consider buying the new Dolaris DLC where you can build meat ships and fight a hive mind fallen empire? Yeah, probably. I mean, I would. I think I'm a few DLCs behind in Stellaris, but I read an article about the big patch that they're releasing like this month, and how they're like completely reinventing the mechanics of the game again. And I'm like, oh, most of this looks interesting. I think they're adding a lot of stuff from Victoria 3 to it. So I probably will. I'll probably think about playing it again. The only thing is that like I have so many games I want to play, and I have no free time to play any of them. So I have to like I'll buy it because I want to play it, and then I'll never have the actual like hours to play the thing. We'll see. One benefit of superconducting magnets is that the power draw is low, as electrons can flow through the superconducting material with no resistance. Yup. All the power draw from maintaining superconducting magnets is entirely to keep them cool. Yeah. That is... Yeah. The Victorian... Thank you for the $20, 20 Aussie buck super chat here, J Lord. The Victorian period fascinates me in many ways, while technology and economics advance the period in Europe, and empires and its backlash against Napoleon's liberalism, religion, and monarchy are back in that era. Yeah, it was you know, turns out that history is a series of dialectical revolutions and counter-revolutions until we get to here. That's the... Dazia says, I think AOC is running for Senate, not president. That, I think, is very much more likely to happen. I think AOC is too young to really run for president at this point. But going for Chuck Schumer's Senate seat that comes up soon would definitely be an easy win for her, I think. And her being in the Senate for a little bit too... Because the thing is, like, you know... The House is very much focused on, like, a lot of, like, you know, low down, like, you know, sort of, like, on the ground type issues and much more close to your constituencies. Senators do, like, the committees and stuff like that. And if AOC wants to run for president, she's going to need to, like, you know, she's going to need to build up her, like, you know, foreign policy experience, and is going to need, like, you know, like, it's going to need to, like, have, like, more hands-on experience working with, like, big machinery in the U.S., you know, theoretically, you know, pending that, like, you know, the United States actually, like, stays together over the next few years. I don't know what the fuck's going to happen, obviously, with Trump and everything, but some time in the Senate, like, most people who run for president are either senators or governors. And her having that sort of background in the Senate would definitely help raise her profile on that. What about Tim Walz? I don't know if Tim Walz, like, I don't know. We'll see what Tim Walz does with, like, you know, when they're starting to... Next year, I guess, when they start to cycling up for the next set of primaries. Like, around this time next year is when, like, the first people will probably start announcing that they're running for president, right? For 2028. Or wait. No, it's 2025, 2026. No, it won't be for, like, another 2 years, I guess. There's going to be a presidential election still? I think so. They may not be, like, you know, fair. They may, like, do something to, like, disqualify anybody who is not Trump from running, but yeah, I think that to say that there just won't be elections is a bit too far. They will just have meaningless elections. Even, like, most dictatorships have elections. They're just shams. It's Peter Dutton in the election. He lost yesterday. He was pro-nuclear power, but then again, Australia has uranium mines, so in the age of nuclear environmentalism and mining, there could be more around uranium. Okay. That's... yeah. Canada also is a uranium mining country, but we do have nuclear power plants, so... I know, because nuclear power powers my car. Do you think it's true there's an internal power struggle inside Trump's administration between anti-war and pro-war factions? I wouldn't be surprised if there is, like, 1,000 power struggles happening in Trump's government. It's so chaotic and it's so, like, corrupt that, like, and there's so many, like, very different power brokers in Trump's government. Like, the alliance that needed to be made to make Trump to make Trump happen is full of so many people with so many different like aims and goals that they're all going to be fighting for relevance and popularity. Like, even the fact that like the fact that like in the U.S. like right now the U.S. is about to have like one of the worst like economic shocks to its system in its entire history, because essentially the entire like beating heart of the American economy just got ripped out of its chest with the tariffs. And the fact that like the CEOs of like Walmart and like all the sort of big box stores that really rely on these like, you know, on Chinese supply networks and stuff like that to function, the fact that they can't even get on a turn is showing there's like some really like there's things are getting really, really weird in Trump world. But yeah. Do you think Alberta will ignore the rights of First Nations to join the U.S.? Oh boy. So this is another thing that came up, is that like Alberta is like during the election, the people whined in Alberta saying that if they if they lose the election, if the Conservatives lose, this was like their sort of like, you know, if you leave me, I'll kill myself type of abusive thinking. But they were like, if you leave, like if the Liberals win, then Alberta is going to vote to separate. And like, first of all, people have made a pretty decent case to show that they kind of can't. They're not like Quebec. They joined Canada in a very different way. That means that they don't really have the legal right to separate. But Danielle Smith just put forward a bill to make it easier to do a referendum on such a on various things, but this could be such a thing. But the thing is that like Quebec or Albertan separate independence does not have like the same staying power as it does like in Quebec. Like Quebec's nationalist movement, like Quebec's separatist movement, is like over 100 years old, like if not older, and it has like several like major political parties in that country or in that in that nation that their entire goal is eventually getting independence. Like the Bloc Québécois and the Parti Québécois are both explicitly separatist parties. Alberta hasn't done that legwork, and the thing is, like, without that legwork, like, you can't just like vote to leave Canada and not have to deal with like a bunch of fucked up like random shit. Like, as you pointed out, the fact that like a good chunk of Alberta's territory does not belong to Alberta. It's federally protected land. There's like land that the federal government has. But then there's also land that is given to Indigenous nations through a treaty between them and the Canadian government, not the Alberta government. This issue came up in 1995 when it came to the Quebec referendum as well. Is like Indigenous people in like Indigenous reserves and like the various like territories that they hold in Alberta are not made with the Alberta government. Their land is like, it is theirs through a agreement that they have made with Ottawa. And so Alberta doesn't really have a role in that. So Quebec is kind of like Canada's Texas. I would say that Quebec is more like Canada's Scotland. Like Scotland has a independence party. It has a like very old independence movement that is active and is relevant in Scottish politics to this day. To different degrees, but still relevant. And I would say that Quebec has that sort of tradition. Alberta separation has always had some yahoos who believed in it. It's never been popular. And I know that with everything that's going on right now, like joining the U.S. is not a popular thing in Alberta, despite all of their sort of belly aching. Like, yeah. Do you think there'll be an election but no Democratic candidate? Or there will be a Democratic candidate who will be like mysteriously arrested right before the election, and none of their votes will get counted properly and stuff like that. What kind of car do you drive? I drive a Hyundai Ioniq. It's a hatchback sedan. Let's see. Conservatives in Europe invented the welfare state back when capitalism was second fiddle to aristocracy. When the bourgeoisie gaining ground over nobles led to its gradual decline. Okay. A lot of the welfare state was built up after World War II as a sort of desperate attempt to keep the working class from becoming communists. Yeah. Also, would any country recognize Alberta's independence? I'll bet Trump would. Especially if he was going to try to annex it and turn Alberta into, what's it called, like America's version of the fucking Crimean Peninsula or whatever. Are Quebec separatists generally left or right wing? Scottish independence people are generally at least progressive liberals. Yeah, I'd say that that's similar. Like the Bloc Québécois, outside of its like nationalist stuff, and it is fairly like social democratic in its politics. Although I will say that it's fairly racist. So there's that. Why does Pierre Poilievre hate Doug Ford so much? Mostly it is... So Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre have a very interesting dynamic based on the fact that they are in two slightly different political parties. So Pierre Poilievre came up through the Canadian Alliance, which was like a really right-wing party that existed in Canada in the 90s, and then merged with the Progressive Conservatives to become the Conservative Party of today. He is very socially conservative. He's like anti-abortion. He like has a bunch of like, he does a bunch of like culture war stuff. It's the reason. It's the entire like sort of part of the conservative political project that that is why they can't. They, despite them like trying over and over and over again, they can't seem to actually form a government, because ever since like Stephen Harper, who was very socially conservative but was smart enough to like kind of like keep it on the DL. Since Stephen Harper, the Conservative Party has struggled to have a leader who isn't like playing footsie with like Albertans who are like blood and soil and like like they're just like American style social conservatives. The problem is that the Conservative Party of Canada, like that sort of like policy, is popular with its base in like the West, in like Alberta and Saskatchewan, but it's not like this is like a regular thing in Canadian conservative politics, is that every time the Conservative Party plays with being socially conservative, like like being like, well, why do let's be more racist, or let's be more like sexist or something like that, it like loses them a lot of their voter base in Ontario, especially in this critical region called the 905, which is sort of the suburbs around Toronto, which usually, is usually the like deciding area, like the battleground that decides elections. Now, Doug Ford is the progressive conservative premier of Ontario, and he just won his third majority government in a row, which is like insane. He's very popular here, and he's very popular around Toronto. But it's because Doug Ford keeps away from all of the social conservative shit. And so they don't like each other because Pierre Poilievre is like he's an ideologue. He is a right wing, like a far right ideologue. While Doug Ford is just a corrupt rich guy. And Doug Ford probably dislikes like a lot of like what Poilievre's doing with the conservatives because associating the conservatives with this like sort of like, you know, American Republican style bullshit is probably hurting his brand. And if like I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future we saw Doug Ford run for leader of the Conservative Party, because he would win. He would win so hard it would be insane. Because he would be able to connect with that sort of 905 base that like the idea of tax cuts, like the idea of like, no services for anybody, typical like right-wing stuff, but they don't like the sort of the sexism and racism and like, that kind of like social conservative culture war shit, because that's like American style politics and nobody likes that here. So like he would win, like the conservatives would win that so hard. But yeah, but that's why the Conservative Party of today was made of a merger of two political parties that have a very different idea of what conservative politics in Canada should be like. And the one that has the most power in the party right now is one that is basically going to consistently keep it from really winning in a winning in the sort of parts of Canada it needs to win in order to form government. And yeah, it's going to be tough. And the other one that is more like less ideologically inclined and more about just right wing economic stuff. And so yeah, they're at a loggerheads, and I think that is the major internal struggle in the Canadian right at the moment. Fun paleontology fact. Earlier this year, the Jurassic Saurophaginox was classified as chimeric, comprised of sauropod material and a very large allosauride parts. It's now an Allosaurus anax. I am so lost. Does that mean that they mischaracterized two like one skeleton as actually multiple skeletons or something? Didn't PP and the Conservatives win flip 905 areas in Ontario and other parts of Ontario? They still lost, so the 905 is relevant anymore on its own. Not on its own, but and I don't know. Let me just look at the freaking election results. I mean, all right. They did make gains in the 905, but it's not like they won the 905. Like here, let's look at this Google image search thing. Yeah. So if you look here, this is the GTA. So the GTA is the term we use for the Greater Toronto Area, and this is so blue is conservative and red is liberal and little orange there is NDP. So this is 2021. This is the election we had in 2021, and that's where they were at. But you look the conservatives made some gains, but in the Toronto core didn't really swap. But also this is all 905 right here. And they made some gains, but not a ton. They got closer. A lot of these races here, a lot of these little ridings here, they came closer than they did. But at the end of the day, the Liberals still pulled through. And so it wasn't enough to completely to like really flip the 905 enough to like to win over the election. But like you think about it, like Canada only has 330 something seats in Parliament, or 340 something seats in Parliament, and look how many seats there are here in the Toronto area. It's massive. If you look at like the whole country overall, you can see like they just completely run up the score here in the West, and then like, you know, rural Ontario, and then in all of the cities they lose. Like the Liberals just like win. So like we like, you know, we don't have the electoral college here, so you know, we don't have it so that like, you know, one person's vote represents like 600 times the voting power or whatever. But the reason what like the thing is like we've had a couple of elections where like the Liberals like won the election even though they got fewer votes than the Conservatives, and that's because like over here in Alberta the Conservatives are winning with like, you know, 85% of the vote, while like all these other areas Liberals are winning with like, you know, sometimes like, you know, like 39, 40, 45% of the popular vote. So unfortunately this map looks really weird because Canada is an extraordinarily large country, but its population is very condensed in its urban areas, and so even more so than the US, it looks a lot more conservative than it actually is. So if we look at like maybe, I don't know, like we can find like a more like popular vote or something like that. Let's go to the Canadian one. Yeah. So you look at like the sort of like votes here, you can see that like that the Liberals got like 580, like, you know, like got like close to 500,000 more votes than the Conservatives did, which is like, you know, it's significant. You know, 2% of the popular vote, which is, you know, in America that's massive, right? So yeah. Do I think that Trump will ignore the Columbia River Treaty with BC and divert water into the states? Who knows? He's dumb enough to do other things. He might do something like that. Let's see. So I don't know what you're saying here. Does this mean that Allosaurus annex is like a sauropod or like a theropod that looks like it might actually be like, is it bigger than Tyrannosaurus, or is it just kind of like, you know, is it still, or is it just like, you know, just a really big Allosaurus that we didn't know about before? Which, you know, there's different degrees of cool happening there. So let's see. You always forget that the colors are flipped. Yeah, I mean yeah. I think the Conservatives are blue also. Like it's true in the UK as well. In the UK, you don't see that because their Liberal Party is very small. Like the UK have a red, or no, the UK in the UK, like what's it called? In the UK, the Labour Party is red, and yeah, the Conservatives are blue. And then they use yellow for SNP, but then what color are the Liberal Democrats? I don't know what color they use. I guess they have to win seats to have a color to be on the map or whatever. But I think it's true in Australia too. Like their Conservative Party are called the Liberals, and I think they're blue, and then they have a Labour Party that is red. Excuse me, you shouldn't talk Ontario. The Lib Dems like an orange yellow color. Okay. But isn't like the Scottish, isn't the SNP also yellow? So there's like 2 shades of yellow? That's gross. That's a color nightmare. Now, okay, now like kind of bouncing between that and the freaking paleontology talk. Yeah, the T-Rexes keep getting bigger. It's what, so like to this date, the Tyrannosaurus Rex is still like the largest predator that has ever lived on Earth. Yeah, as far as we know. Is that, or the largest land predator, I should say, because there's probably like whales or something like that that are bigger, and they're technically carnivores. Oh no, it's saying Spinosaurus was bigger. Okay. Goddamn Spinosaurus. I have been so, I know that what's it called? I feel like when I like, you know, got old enough that I stopped like kind of following dinosaur stuff. I feel like most of like the development in paleontology happened in like the last 20 years. Like it's been absolutely insane how much paleontology has changed in the last like couple of decades, and like we're in a whole new world and I have no idea what's going on in that space anymore. Dinosaurs. The SNP uses like a tan color. It's a lighter color. The Lib Dems shades not mixed together. Okay. How do Canadian primaries work? Are there primaries and ridings where Liberal candidates debate each other similar to Democratic primaries in the U.S.? No. There's a couple ways that are... So how it works is... we don't call them primaries. We call them leadership races. So the way that it works is like... first of all, the party has a leader, right? The party has a leader. There could be a leadership race just triggered by like, like challenges to leadership. It works differently in every party on the inside. And then they have their own leadership race and it's its own thing. And the, what's it called? They don't do primaries or anything like that. They just sort of have a vote. Usually there's like a conference and they have a vote, and every party member can vote, and they vote for a leader. And the leader of the biggest party, like the party with the most seats in parliament, is the prime minister. You don't vote for the prime minister at all. Now, in the different ridings, which are sort of our, I guess, like I think in America they're called districts or whatever. In our various ridings, the parties will try to field a candidate in each of them. They mostly do. I think there's like, like some parties they don't. Obviously, smaller parties will have a harder time running. There are some people who are only running in like one little thing. But so choosing a leader of like those various different things is mostly done through having a leadership race, like a vote or something like that in that place. So like, I was thinking of a couple of examples, but like I was sort of associated with the leadership race that happened in the New Democrats in a riding that I used to live in, because they redistricted me out of it. But we had a few candidates who wanted to be the candidate in the federal election. Then the party did a sort of vetting process, and they had us bring in a third person. And then one of the people dropped out because she just didn't want to do it anymore. And so we had two candidates. And then they held a leadership race event where the two of them made their cases, took questions, and then anybody who lived in the riding and was, quote, a member in good standing, which means that you were like you had like paid your dues and you were like a member of the party, could vote. And whoever won was the candidate. But there's very often times like where candidates there's no choice and there's just like, they just like walk right into it. There are some places where like, because the parties want to have a candidate in every single riding, sometimes there's not like a local riding association to like choose a candidate or field one. And so they'll have what are called fly-in candidates, who are just like people that the party just like kind of like drops in and registers on the ballot just so that they can say they had somebody in there. But welfare state started before World War I, and the German Emperor and Austro-Hungarian Empire, both conservative monarchies. No post. Oh yeah, I guess like there was what's it called? I keep thinking of I guess I would think of like, what was it called? Like Red Vienna. Red Vienna was like an example of that. I don't know exactly what point you're trying to make, J Lord, though, but yeah. A lot of those governments did those things because, like, working movements, like, socialist movements kind of forced their hand. Do you have any news of Mia Mulder? Nothing detailed. I texted her a couple weeks ago, and she replied saying she was okay. So, but she's been kind of hard to get a hold of in recent months. But yeah, that was the last I texted her. I was just like, I texted her on her birthday, and I just said like, hey, we haven't talked in a while. Hope you're doing okay. And she said that yeah, she's okay. Yeah. Do you think that JWST really did find signs of a water world? Definitely did find. I think they like. If you're talking about like the. I'm trying to remember what that planet's called again. I'll open my Google alerts because I have a thing open for it. The planet, oh gosh, where is it? K2-18b. That's I think that's what you're referring to. So James Webb has definitely found water worlds before. That is like not in dispute, but the big thing about the K2-18b or whatever was that they found signs of what they thought was chemistry that could only have been the result of biological activity, or at least as far as we know, there is no source of the chemistry that they had on being anything but that. And so the result was like, okay, if this works, then like it's a good it's candidate for SETI. I don't know about SETI, but it's a good candidate for like if you're talking about this one, like K2-18b is like as far as like I can tell, like they were talking about how it was a pretty good like they thought it might be like a sort of bacterial, like the chemical that was found in its atmosphere is a chemical that we find on Earth that's produced only by bacteria. And so they're like, maybe this is like a big ball of bacteria, like so like on an ocean world or something like that. But I have I've been trying to keep my eye on this story because whenever things like that come up, I want to keep my eye on it because of the podcast and everything like that. And I'm already seeing that some people are some experts are claiming that the analysis was flawed and that there are ways to produce the chemicals that they're talking about without life. And so there's already some some creeping doubt about whether or not Kepler was able, whether or not K218b is actually has life on it. So we'll see, but there's a lot of stuff that's there's a lot of stuff that's already kind of the claim is already kind of starting to get kind of falling apart. Canada has claim to the largest known fossil animal we know the color of. It was a rusty red in life. Interesting. I remember one of the things, so my wife and I are in a constant fight about Kelly kind of rejects the concept that dinosaurs had feathers, and I'm a full embracer of it. But I found out that also that it was probably likely that the T-Rex lost its feathers when it became an adult, and so it was actually a little bit more like the Jurassic Park T-Rex than we thought, instead of it being a kind of fluffy creature, which made me a little sad because I was a big fan of fluffy T-Rex, but it turns out that was probably maybe what they looked like when they were babies, and then they kind of lost it you lose down or whatever. Alright, we have about 10 minutes left. What should we chat about? Been a pretty cool, dinosaurs and Canadian politics, and it's funny. I've been I feel like I've been given how much my job intersects so much more with Canadian politics. Now Canadian politics has been so much more relevant, and has had a lot more going on than it has in a long time, and I feel for the first time in a long time I'm way more clued into Canadian stuff than American stuff, because I haven't been following along on what's going on with the US because it's usually just a long string of horrible things that the Trump administration's doing and the Democrats doing nothing. So, I say that while I'm I still listen to Democracy Now! Almost every day, so maybe I'm being a little facetious there, but but there's a lot more kind of relevant stuff happening, especially because I think the last election might have had probably maybe not in the long term, but I was a little bit it would have affected the results of the election would have affected my job prospects and stuff, and I'm oh well. It turns out anyways that both Carney and Poilievre hate fucking immigrants, and so I'm gonna lose my job either way. Anyways. I guess I should actually read what his like press conference says about his policies. But I'm not looking forward to some of this stuff. Oh. Yeah, Parliament starts on May 26th. Okay. There was like a book I read about dinosaur art as people were talking in the chat. I think it was All Possible Yesterdays or something like that. It was a really good book, and like one of the things about it was like, hey, like none of our dinosaur art factors in the fact that like animals are weird and like, you know, fat is a thing, and like we don't know like what fat distribution on these animals would have looked like, and we don't know what like, you know, like they're talking about how like they had like one drawing I think that was like, it was like a triceratops eating a lizard, and it's like, yeah, sometimes herbivores just eat meat. Like sometimes a deer will eat like a squirrel if it's hungry. And like they had like a picture I think of like a bunch of dinosaurs in a tree, and it's like, yeah, sometimes you find dinosaurs, sometimes you just find animals in trees for some reason and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, it was a really like, and like I think the thing that's most known for is that there was this drawing that they did, which is like if you had drawn a baboon using its bones in the same way that we draw dinosaurs using their bones, and like it looked like nothing like we would ever think of for a baboon, as an example. I think it was All Possible Yesterdays was the name of that. Let me see if I can find some of the art from that. All Yesterdays, that's it. Yeah, let's see if I can show you some of this. That's pretty cool. We're going to finish this off with Dino Talk. Yeah. Yeah, like the sort of protoceratopses in the trees like that, and like yeah, this is the baboon if drawn like the way that we draw or drew dinosaurs, or the way that we drew dinosaurs. If we drew it with the way we do a skeleton for a dinosaur type thing. Yeah, like we don't have things like this kind of stuff, like this kind of flesh that we wouldn't have covered, or like there's a really good one that was like oh, there's the baboon. But like there's one where like they had like a dinosaur that was like fluffy, and I wanted to find that one. It was like a little white puffball. But yeah, it was a cool concept. All Yesterdays. Fluffy dinosaur? Maybe that'll work? I guess not. Oh, yeah. Like this, as like a dinosaur. Because like there were dinosaurs that lived in like cold places. And this is like, oh yeah, like a dinosaur. This is what a dinosaur like, you know, could have looked like. A T-Rex sleeping. So you usually see like dinosaurs like, you know, hunting or something, and instead you'd see like here like, yeah, T-Rex slept. I think I saw down there a Stegosaurus breeding, which is another kind of goofy one. You wouldn't be able to tell tadpoles and frogs are the same animals if you just went by bones. Yeah, I think I remember somebody saying once that, like, not too long ago, we learned that, like, several different ceratopsians or whatever were all just the same species at different stages in life. Something like that. Like, we used to think that there were several different ceratopsian species in one area, and then it turned out that they were just like the same species, just in different life stages. At least that's what I remember. All yesterday's had a picture that also showed that like predators and herbivores didn't always fight if there wasn't like, you know, a necessarily need for it, that kind of thing. It's interesting. I should read that again. I own it somewhere. All right, we're getting close to the end. So I think that on that dino topic, I will call it for now. I'm hoping that by the next stream I have a video. We'll see. My next month is looking real busy, so we'll see what happens, but I think it'll be okay. You guys are great. Thank you. I apologize for being a little bit late, but I think we ended up having a good time. I hope you guys have a wonderful time, and you take care of yourself, you take care of each other, you keep yourself, you know, keep yourself taken care of, and yeah, be nice.